Hello, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, and please check out my channel for other updates. So the last update about Twist of Fate. Pallvi refused to accept Prachi's baby because Rhea is also pregnant, and that actually turns out to be Prachi's imagination. But still, Pallvi and Aliyah insulted Prachi so much. Let's continue. Shahana asks Pallvi to have some shame and asks, how can you talk like this? She says if Prachi was pregnant, then also you would have called her baby as an illegitimate. Aliyah says yes, we would have never accepted Prachi's baby, but Prachi can never be pregnant. She says now there's no chance. Shahana is about to reveal about Prachi's pregnancy, but she stops herself thinking about Prachi's promise. Aliyah asks Shahana to be silent and goes. Shahana thinks that she did right by not telling them about Prachi's pregnancy, else they would have caused the baby. Shahana says Ranbir, and she thinks that why is Ranbir behaving like this, and she says Prachi is very sad. Prachi runs on the road recalling Aliyah and Pallvi's accusation. She recalls her pregnancy news and Sushma's words that if she chose to go back to Ranbir, then she should not return. She collides with a car thinking about it and she falls down. The lady in the car gets down. Kamleshwari asks Ranbir that what is the matter. Ranbir says I cannot say what is going on in my heart. Kamleshwari blesses Ranbir for peace and blesses his baby. Shahana comes there and asks if your love is this, then how would your hatred be for her? Ranbir asks that where is Prachi? Kamleshwari says Prachi is also worried like you. Kamleshwari goes. Shahana says why can't Ranbir see Prachi's worries? She says you said that you married Rhea forcefully, and she asks if this is force. It is connection, this celebration of the baby. Ranbir asks Shahana that where is Prachi? Shahana asks why are you always searching for Prachi, and says leave Prachi on her own. Ranbir says he is worried. Shahana says your mom and Aliyah said bad things to Prachi and they called her a barren woman. She says Prachi couldn't bear it and she has gone. Ranbir says to Shahana that so much happened and you were seeing everything. Shahana says I tried to stop Prachi and I gave a reply to them. The lady makes Prachi sit in the car. Prachi gains consciousness. The lady says she will take her to the hospital. Prachi get down from the car and she started walking again. Aliyah says I thought, and she then closes the door and hugs Rhea. She says this is an appreciation hug. You have said that you are pregnant with Ranbir's baby. Aliyah says you did this as it is the work of your left hand. She says I was doubtful that if you can do this work, but you did this work flawlessly. Someone goes from there. Aliyah opens the door and says someone was hearing us, but there's nobody here. She finds an earring and says it is of Shahana. She says this means that Shahana heard us. Shahana is in the room and she cries, asking God to stop testing Prachi like this, and God should have some sympathy. Aliyah says to Rhea that I should go and see Shahana. Shahana asks why is my sister bearing all the pain, and she asks God to do something good with Prachi. Aliyah sees Shahana crying in the room and thinks that if Shahana heard us, then she would have been angry and she would have been doing planning and plotting against us. Aliyah thinks to check if Shahana is wearing earring. She looks inside and finds earring in both Shahana's ears. She thinks that then who had secretly been overhearing me and Rhea's conversation. Ranbir comes to the road and searches for Prachi. He shouted aloud calling Prachi. He thinks that Prachi might have gone to such a place where she can get peace. Ranbir hears the temple bell and thinks that Prachi must be there. Prachi comes to their rented house and thinks of Ranbir and her moment together. A flashback is shown. Ranbir falls on the bed and asks Prachi to read. Prachi reads the paper. That's Prachi Part 2, Ranbir Part 2. Ranbir says it is our baby's name. Ranbir says to Prachi that if we get a baby boy, then it will be my extension. If it is a girl, then your extension. He says they will mix their names and keeps the names for the babies. Prachi says that is why I don't want you to make food. She says I will keep the names for the babies. Prachi says to Ranbir that their baby girl will be called Gunjan. Ranbir says it is our neighbor's name. Ranbir says if we have a son, then we would name him Ritfikoli, and if it is a girl, then she will be called Purfikoli. Prachi says we will take our kids to your parents' house and get the elders' blessings. Prachi says to Ranbir that your family are upset with us, but they will be happy with our baby, as it will take our family ahead. Prachi says the interest is more valuable than the principle. The flashback ends. Prachi cries. Ranbir comes to the temple searching for Prachi, and he wonders where Prachi is. He gets worried and cries. He says, I want to apologize to you. He falls on his feet. He bends down on his knees and tells God that everything is happening because of him, and he asked God to punish him and not Prachi. Ranbir asks God to tell him where is Prachi and what is she doing. He cries and then wipes off his tears. He thinks that Prachi might be there where there is peace. He runs out of the temple. Rhea asks Aliyah what happened and if the person was Shahana. Aliyah says no and says Shahana was crying sitting on the corner. Rhea says this means that nobody heard us, but what about this earring? Aliyah says Shahana was having her earrings in her ears. Rhea says I was super tensed. Aliyah says you made Ranbir believe that you are pregnant when there is no baby. Rhea says to Aliyah that we do planning and plotting, but that doesn't mean that I will lie about my baby. Aliyah asks if Rhea saw a movie. Rhea says I am really pregnant. She says you said something to me that night. A flashback is shown. Aliyah asks Rhea to get pregnant. Rhea says Ranbir did not even touch me and says she cannot be pregnant in her wildest dreams. Aliyah asks Rhea to act as if she is pregnant. Rhea says to be real pregnant and faking it is two different things. Aliyah asks her to spend the night with Ranbir and then Ranbir will believe her that she is pregnant. She says we would have used that night, but it is long time. Aliyah asks Rhea to attempt to spend night with Ranbir again. Rhea says to Aliyah that she will spike Ranbir's drink and then the breaking news that Rhea is pregnant will come up and says she will trap Ranbir this time. The flashback ends. Aliyah says so you have trapped Ranbir. Rhea says she is really pregnant with Ranbir's baby. Aliyah tells Rhea that she has trapped Ranbir listening to her advice. Rhea says it is not like that. I was going, then I crossed Prachi's room. I heard Ranbir and Prachi's conversation. A flashback is shown. Ranbir asks Prachi to calm down. Prachi asks him to go and show his love and concern for Rhea. Prachi asks Ranbir to go and tell Rhea how much he loves her. He says I love you and not Rhea, and he asks Prachi to trust him. Prachi says we don't have love, trust and relationship. She pushes Ranbir out of the room and asks him to go if he ever loved her. Rhea smiles hearing Prachi. Rhea says to Aliyah that Ranbir was broken when Prachi hurt him. She says then Ranbir came to the room. He started drinking. A flashback is shown again. Rhea hurts Ranbir and says you need love and not wine. Ranbir asks can you see love anywhere? Rhea asks him to come near her and see in her eyes that there is love there. Rhea asks Ranbir and says I will love you so much. Ranbir says I don't need it. Rhea says the thing that you need. Ranbir says I don't want anything and he asks Rhea to go. Ranbir blames Rhea for the happenings and says Prachi left me because I married you. He says can't you go and tell Prachi that you threatened me with suicide? Rhea asks Ranbir and says I really love you. Ranbir cries. Rhea says I am with you. Ranbir falls on the bed crying. Rhea says whatever happened is for good and says I love you. She says I love you very much. Ranbir sees Prachi in Rhea and says I gave all your right to Rhea and he apologized to her. Ranbir asks did you forgive me, thinking that he was talking to Prachi. Rhea says yes, I am your Prachi. Ranbir falls on the bed and says I love you Prachi. He kisses on her cheek. They get intimate. The flashback ends. Ooh, I'm shocked. So they actually got intimate. Aliyah asks Rhea, are you crazy? She says, I wanted Ranbir to accept you and your baby. Aliyah says this time was not right to go close to Ranbir. This time Ranbir really loves Prachi. Rhea says to Aliyah that I really don't give a damn. I don't care if Ranbir loves Prachi or not. I don't want Ranbir, but I need my name beside Ranbir's name. Rhea says I want Ranbir's baby, and I don't care if Ranbir loves 100 girls like Prachi. I really don't give a damn. Aliyah asks Rhea that why is she talking like Prachi? If she did not get Ranbir, then will she stay with his picture? Rhea says this statement doesn't suit me. I became helpless. She says I will use Ranbir's baby against him so that he becomes mine forever. Rhea says to Aliyah that this is my victory party. She gets vomiting sensation. Aliyah asks her to go to the victory party later and she should first vomit. Rhea vomits. Aliyah says you would have much problem. Rhea says Ranbir would sacrifice Prachi saying my sacrifices. Aliyah thinks that Rhea is right and everything would end between Ranbir and Prachi with this Rhea's pregnancy. Ranbir comes to the rented house and thinks that I knew that you will be here, where you get peace. He thinks that you are somewhere here. I can feel you. He hears Prachi crying. Prachi turns and looks back. Prachi thinks that he will not come to me. He is not with me and he has left me long back, and it is me who misses him every time. Ranbir comes inside and sits beside Prachi. He feels helpless. Pallvi asks Rhea and Aliyah what happened, that they are not in the party. She says even Ranbir is not downstairs and says how will it look? Rhea says, I was feeling vomitish and that is why I stayed back. Pallvi says, I understand, and she asks Aliyah to be with Rhea. Aliyah says she is worried and excited too. Rhea is going to become a mother. Pallvi says, I understand, and she asks Rhea not to worry. They come downstairs. A guest comes there and congratulates Pallvi. She says all the ladies will force their sons to become papa. Pallvi asks Rhea to take Neelam's blessings. The lady Neelam asks that where is your daughter-in-law Prachi? Pallvi says this is my daughter-in-law Rhea. Neelam says I have seen Prachi and Ranbir's picture. Rhea gets upset and goes. Pallvi goes behind her. Rhea says I should not be here. I don't know who will come and comment on me. She says I wanted to be happy, but I am crying today. Pallvi says this party and the blessings are for Rhea. She says she should feel proud to become a mother. She says I haven't given you pregnancy gift and says I will not let Prachi stay here and I will not let Prachi's reflection fall on you and your baby. She says you are this house daughter-in-law. You are Ranbir's wife and his baby's mother. Pallvi says you have the first right on everything. Aliyah thinks that Rhea is taking advantage well and she is clearing Prachi from her way. Prachi recalls and a flashback is shown. Ranbir says he is making a secret promise. Prachi asks him to say it. Ranbir says he promised himself that no matter what happens, he would never leave Prachi as our souls are connected with him. He says, I will never separate from you as we are two bodies and one soul. The flashback ends. Ranbir says that these memories gives me clarity that I should stay with Prachi. He says in his heart that these memories made me realize my priority. He says Prachi is his wife and his first child's mother. He says he will stay here with Prachi and the baby. Prachi sees Ranbir and asks him not to say anything. Ranbir asks Prachi if she remembers that he had promised her here. She says, you have promised me many times. Prachi says, you said that you love me, but you love Rhea. Ranbir says, I love you only. Prachi says, if you would have loved me, then Rhea wouldn't have gotten pregnant for you. Ranbir says to Prachi that I just love you and he hugs her. Prachi pushes Ranbir away and says, you break my heart always, and she asks him to go. Ranbir says, I would undo everything. Prachi says, don't touch me with the same hand with which you touched Rhea. Ranbir says, I did not touch Rhea, I had only touched you. Ranbir hugs Prachi and says, I love you very much and I cannot go away from you. Prachi recalls Rhea's baby shower and says, you have ended everything and you have wrote such a story which started where our story ends. She says, you killed us. Ranbir asks Prachi to listen. Prachi walks away. Shahana sees Aliyah and recalls her words that Prachi doesn't have any chance of getting pregnant. She calls Aliyah and asks if she knows who she is. Aliyah says sorry. Shahana says you are not sorry. Aliyah says what a fool and says I am not saying sorry to you. It is an expression as I did not hear you. Shahana says to Aliyah that is why I am saying that you are not sorry, not to hear and understand. She says how will you understand when you don't hear yourself? She says to understand others, you need to have humility, which you don't have. Aliyah says she will not bear Prachi. Shahana says that Aliyah should think of how Prachi bear her and says if Prachi doesn't return home, then she will not spare Aliyah. Shahana says if Prachi think of justice, then Aliyah can think of what Prachi can do and she will not spare anyone if anything happens to Prachi. Aliyah looks at Shahana in shock. Honestly guys, this is very shocking to me. I didn't know that Ranbir and Rhea actually got intimate. Really? Anyways, thank you so much guys for watching. Please don't forget to like this video, share it, and please subscribe for more updates. Thank you.